Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and today I'm going to do something I've never done before, something that may not even work. We'll only find out if this video airs, and that is that I'm going to make a faction in real time. I got this idea a couple of days ago, and I was really excited to see if it could even work. Right now, in front of everybody, I'm going to attempt to make a faction that only has one card that already exists, and see how far I can get in real time. Maybe I'll finish, maybe I won't, maybe it will be good, maybe it will be bad. Who cares? Let's just sit down and have some fun. I think this is really interesting because it gives people a chance to see what the custom process is like, what are some of the thought decisions that go into making something like this, what are some of the pitfalls and the gotchas. You only tend to see the finished product. You never really see the work that goes into it before then, or you really don't get to see the brainstorming part, which might actually be the most fun. This faction idea is something that I have debated for many, many years, if it was even possible in Smash Up, if it was even a good idea. I say that because there really is only one comparable that I can think of to what this faction kind of wants to do, and it's Banlist, and Banlist isn't really the best example anyway because it comes from Geeks, which is a very hotly contested faction. The question is, how much do you need to know about a faction's actual existence? In my belief, there's a faction idea there that is basically waiting to be explored, hiding in plain sight, and that is the idea of card quantity. For example, Banlist, when I choose to play it, since I need to know before I actually go and search the hand, I need some information about the faction, usually from a card list. Well, what if we actually built a concept around that idea where card quantity matters? I had to think of a theme for this, and so I decided to choose the theme of Pawn Stars, which it turns out I know nothing about entirely. I then realized that Merchants was a much better theme and something I'm much more familiar with, and it led me towards the idea of the Peddler. Now, I will say a couple of things up front. This is the only card for the faction that exists. I'm going to build this faction from scratch, off the top of my head, right in front of you, with really only this idea. That being said, there are a couple of design constraints that I have made going into this video. The first is that the card of Peddler exists. You're going to see two keywords that I'll be using during this design process: common and rare. A common card is any card that appears more than once in your deck. Normally, there's going to be a number of common cards. You get the 4 recruits, the 3 soldiers, the 2 elites, and 2 double features. Off the top of my head, that should be 13. For this faction, I'm actually going to be doing dueling elites in order to make it a little bit more balanced. If you take away the double feature as an elite and make each elite unique, that would be 9 unique cards, which I'm calling rare cards, and 11 common cards, much closer to 50-50. So that being said, I have the Peddler already designed. I know that I'm going to be doing the dueling elites, and I've decided on card names just because card names are usually the hardest part for me, and I like to decide those names in advance before actually going. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do things at a high level. So this is how I typically lay out my factions. You can see that I've stamped things with future awesome abilities just because I've made those cards in advance because I knew the names of the minions. I've taken Barrel's format because I think it actually does really good, where you have the leader, the 2 double features on the top. That way you get your 5-card identity in the first row. And that way, if you're looking top down or bottom up, you get to see a faction as it's coming into play in real time. In this case, I'm largely going to be doing bottom up, starting with the recruits because that's already what I have. And again, the recruit ability for the Peddler is to draw a common card off the top of your deck. Drawing a card off the top of your deck is relatively new wording that you may not have seen. What that means is basically you're going to reveal cards from your deck until you reveal a card of the specified type. Then you're going to draw it, and if you have any unrevealed cards, you're going to shuffle them in. That's very verbose. I actually don't like the phrase, draw a card off the top of your deck. I much prefer the term hunting for a card. It's shorter and more concise, but that is the term that Smash Up will be using, so that's what I'm using for this faction because it will be way too wordy otherwise. Draw a common card off the top of your deck. Draw any card that appears more than once off the top of your deck. Now you may be wondering, how do you actually know if a card appears multiple times? I think there's a lot of ways of solving that are outside the context of this video. Some people might complain that you might have to look it up. I think that's easily solved in the divider. Obviously, the divider is not historical, so you'd have to go back and add all that information. That does not matter for the purpose of this video. This video is all about fun, and can I even pull this off? So I've chosen Peddler and Appraiser. If Appraiser doesn't work, it's going to be Swindler. I wanted to have the option for either name depending on which route I want to go. For the Dueling Elites, there's Merlinus. Some of you will hopefully get that reference. There's Nico, or Nico, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. If you get this reference, please leave a comment. You are awesome, and that would be great. And Tressa, hopefully some of you will get that reference as well, although Merlinus is much more obvious than Tressa is. And really hoping someone will get this reference, but I'm not sure if anyone will because it's definitely obscure, but a great one for my childhood. So let's jump right into it. We have common cards and we have rare cards. Now, we would want to avoid using the same idea over and over again throughout the faction. Obviously, we have talked about in the past the idea of the rule of thirds, that you want to break it out into multiple abilities. So I'm going to draw a faction map. What that means is that I'm going to actually start labeling cards with ideas and just at a high level kind of plan out the faction, what it's going to look like. So I've got 2 double features and I'm going to have 6 unique actions. I'm going to go ahead and say that the unique actions are going to be toolboxy because that's kind of a convenient. You've got a rule of thirds. Make sure that the rule of third is met by having 6 cards that have nothing to do really with common or unique. And what type of toolbox abilities, I have no idea, but I think every toolbox is going to need to have some type of power ability. Now, for those who aren't familiar with a toolbox, it's intentionally being different among your different abilities. Like itty critters are a toolbox because you have power counters, you have movement, you have shuffling, you have card draw, you have destruction. Anytime that I have a toolbox, I like to make sure that none of them are actually the same toolbox across any toolbox factions. Now that's easier said than done. So let's go ahead and label one of these as power. Generally, I like to have movement. I don't usually do destruction, so I probably should. What else could we do? Let me just jot down some ideas. So we've got obviously card draw, we've got deck management, recursion, searching. I don't really want to do searching necessarily. I'll put it just in case. Crazy abilities. I love crazy abilities. We've got stalling, specials, action destruction. That's pretty good. Looking at this list, I think it'd be good to have a recursion card in there. Maybe a special card. And we'll go ahead and put in a crazy ability, because that's going to be really hard to come up with the top of my head. So a crazy ability is something that is really unique, really makes you think. I always like to have at least one card that I can point to that could be an action awareness type, one that you really want to dig into, something that feels like I came up with it and it's intrinsically me. So now what we want to do is we want to say, okay, what about our double features? I think this double feature is going to be about access. What I mean by that is if we're going to be having uniqueness, and uniqueness is going to matter, we probably want some way of mitigating the uniqueness in order to provide a little bit more control and make them less draw order dependent. This could also straight up be draw, which is another possibility, but we'll leave those 2 as possibilities. I don't have any ideas yet for the second double feature. We'll come back to that. So if someone cares about common cards, someone else is going to have to care about rare cards. The question is who? Let's put that on the soldiers for now. So far I've got 4 cards that care about commons, 3 cards that care about rares, 6 cards that don't care about either. So if I continue this pattern, that does look to be like a good dichotomy. With dueling elites, sometimes a paradigm that I like to do are polar opposites, where one gives you sort of the opposite ability of the other. That seems kind of cool. So I'm going to put these as rare, and we'll make the leader be common as well. So let's jump right into Tressa and see what we got. So looking at our high level, we have the ability to get common cards. Now let's talk about the balance here for this ability. So a recruit can very often get you 1 card. Sometimes there's a constraint on it, like Good Buddy requires the presence of an action. Sprout will get you a minion 1 turn later. Neophyte can get you an action or play it potentially. It gives you 50% of the cards. So I think that drawing 1 card is definitely a recruit level ability. And the interesting thing about Peddler is that it's guaranteed to not really be a good card. Now, this isn't always true. In Custom Land in particular, we put a greater emphasis on the idea that your common cards should not be as good as your rare cards, and that your rare cards should be relatively balanced amongst each other. That's not really true in the main game. If you take a faction like Ghost, for example, one of their best cards is their double feature. But I can't really control that. I'm going to assume a perfect world with this design. So right now I'm feeling like the leader should probably do something. We get a bunch of common cards. So let's go ahead and write down an idea. Something like talent, play a common card. That seems like that would be really good because you can play a 2, you can play a 3. In your partner faction, you can play a 4. You can play one of your double feature actions. So it's not going to be anything standout. The only problem with this ability, as I'm thinking about it right now, is that there are other leader abilities that I feel are good that this potentially deprecates. So that's okay. It means that we have balance options. I'm not going to do this just yet, but I could say something like play a common minion here or play a common action. So that way, at least the minions must be local, which is still good, but the common action could be anything if it's a base modifier, if it's a minion modifier. But I'm going to keep it as play a common card just because I think that conveys a good direction, and we start to see things taking shape. So based on that leader ability, we would want to think about, okay, how does that tie into our double features? Because our recruits are going to be getting us common cards. We might want to think about, okay, is there another way of keeping our hand sustained? Looking at our dueling elites, so if we're playing common cards, I want to avoid having too many extra plays, but it would be cool to kind of play into the rarity. Because if you think about it, you're going to be having more common cards. If we say that there are 13 and 11, that's 24 out of 40. And common cards also tend to be typically more cast friendly because they need to be, because you wouldn't really want those to be terminal because it's going to lock up your hand. So I think for someone like Nico, if I were to write down talent, play a rare action, and then for Merlinus, talent, play a rare minion, let's look at these individually. So playing a rare action, that seems appropriate for a 4. If you think about playing an action, it's usually constrained in some regard. Like Jasmine, you have to discard a card to play an action, although I think the discarding is just theme and nothing else. You've got the Professor, who needs to discard a Madness card. You've got the Archmage, who is just playing an action. So this is saying that you can only play 6 out of your faction's actions compared to 10. In a normalized spread, that would be playing 12 instead of 20, which seems pretty good. I feel like that's an appropriate ability, especially for a one-off card. And we've certainly seen examples like that where if you compare that to, let's say, Sally from Nightmare, she can play a character modifier, but something like 7 or 8 of Nightmare are character modifiers, and you're likely to pair them with character modifiers. So I like this. I'm going to commit to that for the time being. I'll go ahead and refresh that. Now, Merlinus. I'm not really crazy about this. Playing a rare minion, the problem is that if you play them with a princess type, and especially globally, this is going to be pretty nuts. And even in the faction context of a regular partner, that's only going to be replaying Nico, Tressa, and your leader, your partner leader. That ability feels wrong, so let's think. What else could we do with rare? Maybe if Nico plays, Merlinus recurs. So ongoing. After you play a let's make him a Clyde 2.0 type. So once per turn, after a rare, we'll make him a special. After a base scores, return one of your rare cards there to your hand. So that way he could grab back a rare minion. He can grab back himself, get back a rare action. Not sure how I feel about that just yet, but at least that is a starting position. So you still get that dichotomy. You've got Nico, who plays cards, and Merlinus, who recurs them. Let's go to the Appraiser. So we're playing our common cards, but what are we going to do with the rare ones? A couple of things that jump out. We could do something like a Spartan type, although Spartan is hard. Just spitballing ideas. The idea of reacting to playing a rare card, getting a power counter. Spartan's capped at once per turn, and it's only actions. Rare actions would be much harder. If you cap that at once per turn, though, then Spartan would just definitely be worse because there wouldn't be enough minions to quantify that. And I'm not crazy about Spartan. Let's do something a little bit more creative. So I'm pulling cards from my. If I'm pulling common cards, what does that mean for rare cards? If I pull common cards from my deck, it means I'm actually more likely to draw my rare cards from my natural draw. Maybe I want to lean into that a little bit. I'm going to actually change this slightly. So maybe reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a rare card, that might be a little bit strong, but I think that's an easier structure to work with. I do have a lot of extra plays. I'm probably going to regret that, and I'll probably end up changing one of these. But at least the idea that, okay, my common cards are in my hand. Maybe it's Nico who needs to change. But my common cards are in my hand, and my rare cards are in my deck. Looking at if I kept this structure, the peddlers are very cast friendly, and the upper tier minions are very cast friendly. That tells me that the Appraiser probably wants to be a burst. Your terminal play. That's okay, because I usually like bursting from your soldier slot anyway. You have 3 of them. Typically you win 3 bases. It's fairly consistent, so I think that's good. So let's make this a burst one. And if we're caring about rare cards, I wonder if a cat burglar type could be interesting. So this minion gains +1. So my keyboard is going nuts. And for anyone curious, I'm not being pedantic about wording right now because I'm doing this off the top of my head. This minion gains +1 power until the end of the turn. Let's say for every 2 rare cards in your hand. And obviously we need to reveal them. Reveal any number of rare cards from your hand. Revealed. So reveal any number of rare cards from your hand. This minion gains +1 power until the end of the turn for every 2 cards revealed. So let's talk about this. I've got 10 cards in my hand. This would cap out at 5, normally speaking. Maybe more if you overdrew with Tressa playing a Peddler. Let's even just call it 6. That would be 9. It's only rare cards that, if you're a well-stocked hand, that could easily be a 6. I think this is pretty good. It's common for soldiers to get to be around the 5. They can even sometimes get to 6. I like this. I think it's interesting because it means that you're collecting, you are kind of hoarding cards in your hand, and it's making the fact that your rare cards matter, which again, you're very likely to draw, and your common cards are easily fetched and easily played. I think it does. You play Tressa, you play a Peddler, the card will replace itself, giving you space back in your hand. That almost makes me wonder if hand space should be a consideration. So Marlinus would draw rare cards. I'm pretty sure one of these two will stay and the other one won't. All right, so let's talk about some double features. So first thing I need to do is I need to do an action. Now I do not have art for the actions because I have some art, but I don't have art for like anything specific. It's all just random stuff like this, so it's not going to matter much. I'll fix this later and maybe add some more art. So we want access to some of our cards, and I think that we want to, play with the idea of rare versus common. I think some form of exchange could be interesting. So let's call this currency exchange. So discard 2 common cards to draw a rare card from your discard pile, or let me make this smaller. This seems really interesting. The idea that you can exchange certain cards for one another. So you're drawing a bunch of common cards. Maybe you play them, maybe you don't want to play them. You can use that to get back any card from your discard pile, or you can go the opposite. You can discard a rare card to get back 2 common cards. I think that could be really useful in a partner situation, like getting back 2 groupies for a card you're not going to play, or getting back 2 Zappa. Certainly anything that could be chained together. Maybe some things with extra actions, and they don't have to be the same. When you compare to a card like Collection Plate can take 2 random cards from your hand. I think Grave Robbing is way too strong, especially as a double feature. For zombies, we know that. I think this is pretty much sort of in the ballpark of what we want. So let's do this as currency exchange. And we'll go ahead and load that into our file. I like to do things this way because it lets me see at a high level how the faction is progressing. So now we need another double feature. I think we have enough extra plays. Now this is potentially more of a restocking card. It does provide you access. It provides you access from the discard pile. I think searching is overdone. Like, it would be cool if you could search your deck or discard pile for it, but I think that there's enough searching in the game right now, and searching tends to be really kind of strong and overdone. So let's not do searching. So if this is drawing from your discard pile, let's do another form of draw. So I'm going to grab another, I think this one looks sufficiently different from what we've done so far. What do we want to do here? Drawing cards are always hard because drawing doesn't have a baseline. Drawing cards are all over the place. Drawing 2 cards I consider to not be good. So again, playing with the idea that we're trying to find value from our deck and the fact of being rare. I think something like this could work. So draw 2 cards. If they are both rare, you may that could be interesting. The question is, do I like this, and is it programmatic? Programmatic meaning, could other abilities interact with? I'm probably overcomplicating it for the audience, but whatever. So I am. I don't know that I like this. I'm going to keep things very simple. This card is not played with your regular action. There. I think that's probably a little bit more exciting, and we'll call this. See, with minions it's a lot easier because minions are sort of rank based, but supply and demand. So draw 2 cards. If this card is not played with your regular action, draw another card. So the ability to draw 3 cards could be really good. It's certainly stronger than the fake baseline of drawing 2. Tressa can play it. Question is, can anyone else play it? I'm going to leave this in for now. We'll come back and change it. I don't think that drawing 3 cards is a double feature, so we're not going to even entertain that idea. Let's move on to our rare cards. So we want to make this be cast friendly, and we want to make these be really interesting, and all of relative parity with one another as well. So just jotting, saying things off the top of my head, I think that merchants are likely to sell items, so that's probably going to mean modifiers, minion modifiers, like something that you have on you. Could also mean standard actions like you're using the thing. I don't see them necessarily being base modifiers, but let's stick with the idea of minion modifiers. So let's start with moving. All right, so I'm going to come up with a move card. What do we buy that would do movement? I know it's lame, but we'll do boots, because boots are always, my go-to movement card. Boots of Speed. That's a terrible name. Whatever. Boots of Hermes? Sure, why not? Okay, so movement cards are really hard to have a baseline. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do, this is my terminology, not necessarily official. Minion modifier, I just think it's cleaner that way than play on one of your minions. And friendly means play on one of your minions. It's meant for you. It's extremely important anytime that you have a movement card, because otherwise you could just move anything. And that's not really what I want for this card, because that makes it much harder to have a baseline. So talent, move this minion. How else could we make it special? With movement, I generally like it when you can use the movement card terminally, but there's some incentive to not do so. So thinking of cards, like there's got to be some form of ongoing. Cards that come to mind are like, what if we build a cast-friendly power and speed? So ongoing, at the start of your turn, this minion gains +2 power until the end of the turn. So power and speed lets you move and get 2 power. And it's a standard action, and there's a lot of benefits to being a standard action in that context. But here, you can use the card terminally for movement, but if you wait, you'll get an extra bonus. That's kind of cool. And I actually think that that provides a little bit of direction, because the idea, like these items are appreciating in value. The more equity you put into them, that could be interesting. So let's see if we can play around with that concept. The idea that, hey, maybe some form of time matters. So for the power card, yeah, these names are awful. If you see them with completely different names at the end of the video, naming things is really hard. So there's this vault that I have. It's a list of cards that are just waiting for an opportunity. And one of those cards I actually think is kind of perfect here, but I'm going to modify it slightly just for this. This is a terrible way of wording it. So at the start of your turn, you may use this card's talent. This minion gains +2 power until the end of the turn. So at the start of your turn, you may use this card's talent, which will give it +2 power, and this minion gains +2 power until the end of the turn. That's pretty cool. You can use it terminally for +2 power if you need it, but you'll get more benefit if you use it. And +4 seems like a good number. It's cast friendly. Compare that with an augmentation, which is a double feature. I use the 4s, which is a single feature. I definitely like power activation having lower ceilings, because it trades the cast friendliness and the power activation for overall raw output. I think that's a pretty good fit. All right, what else do we have? So we've got a power card. Playing a rare action. Yeah, that would be good. It's hard to play Destroy in a burst context, but we'll figure it out. So Destroy. You sold me some poison. Okay. How do we do this as a minion modifier? Maybe we don't. If you make a minion modifier, if you have talent-based destruction, that's a bad thing. So this is probably going to be a standard action. Let's make this our special Destroy. And then we'll come up with something else. Maybe we'll make this a stalling card. If we make this a special destruction, what comes to mind are cards like Shen Yu, which is power comparison destruction. Very strong, single feature, but requires singly powerful minion. We've got the Spy special, which can destroy a 3, which is actually pretty insane, because the Spies also have a special that lets you take control of a 4, and controlling is way better than destroying, and it's a 4. So I don't think that destroying a 3 is a baseline, especially because although action heroes do require only 1 minion, they can destroy printed power 3. So I'm going to cheat here. So special, play before base scores. Destroy up to N total power worth of minions there. So this is something that I do on occasion. When I don't know what the actual number is, I'll say N, and before the game, I'll sort of get a read on what I think N should be, and I'll play to that, and then evaluate N. N might here be 5. So destroying a 3 or a 2, or destroying a 5. Maybe it should be 4 to destroy 2 2s or a single minion. That way it's a lot harder to cover the spread. I don't believe we've seen any split destruction types as a special. We've got let the dogs out, which kind of does that again, power capped. Um, I think this could be interesting. A little bit telegraphed with some of their draw with with Merlinus, but you know what? I don't care. They'll have to play around it, and sometimes playing around things is not the worst thing in the world. I'll keep the font small so they don't have to keep changing it for people. I think that's pretty interesting. The question is, should this be a 23 special? Maybe. I'd have to think about that some more. Right now, I like the idea of it as a special only. We could put that on its development plan. Why do I have a second power? Did I? Oh, that was recursion. I don't know that we need recursion because we have it up here. So what else do we have? We've got deck management. Deck management is pretty easily done as a minion modifier. What do we want to sell that can, like a microscope? No, that doesn't make thematic sense. Magnifying glass. Um, what's that thing that appraisers use to look at a diamond? I'm realizing now that with the appraiser, I wonder if these should be power counters instead of +1 power. So, because if we make the actions be really cast friendly, then they're going to get played early and often, which is going to diminish the value of the appraiser. I think that plus cat burglar is power counters. So we're going to say that this is power counters. If anyone's ever curious, there is always 2 spaces between +1 and power counter. It's the font, and it's really annoying. All right, so that'll take care. It's still a burst ability, but it doesn't have to be terminal. I think that'll give us a lot more flexibility. So that thing that appraisers use to inspect, I don't know what that's called, but we'll call this inspection tool. So make this be a friendly minion modifier. So we've got Jarvis. Jarvis will draw and discard a card. It might be good to look at the top card of your deck. I don't know that this needs any form of equity, so we'll make this be very simple. Look at the top card of your deck. Place it on the top or bottom of your deck. Or discard it. If it is a common card, never know how much to make it. Place a +1 power counter on this minion. Otherwise, place 2 +1 power counters. Let's think about that. No, this isn't really deck manipulation. This is, I like the idea of discarding the card, and the more, if it's common, you don't get as much as if it's rare. But this isn't really, this is too close to power. This isn't actually deck manipulation. What do we do here? So place up the 2 cards on the bottom of your deck. This is more deck sifting, which is okay. That actually could be useful for getting to your more valuable cards. Place up the 2 cards on the bottom of your deck to draw an equal number of cards. That itself is very useful. So I'm going to call that's passive deck sifting. We'll see. This could be on the weaker side. I think it's very useful because you're not wasting a lot of play. This could be a candidate for a micro buff like keeping it in play or any other number of benefits, but let's leave it like that. So we said that this is going to be deck managing. So a stalling card. Stalling cards are always interesting because you need to know if the stalling works or not. So what could you buy that would smoke powder? That could be a thing. I don't think this would be a modifier. I think this would be, maybe it could be. So we've got a minion modifier. We want to stall. Stalling can typically mean breakpoint increase or restricting it plays. That could be interesting. I don't know if this is the right theme for it, but ongoing. Other players must discard a card to play common cards here. That could be interesting. So that it's going to cost them in order to play their most common cards and force them to play their rare cards, which would mean higher power, an indirect form of area control. That is certainly interesting. How do we theme this? And it would cover, because it's here, it would cover minion modifiers and it would cover base modifiers. So it's not just minions, which puts it on dangerous ground type. I'm going to put this as before. For another player plays a common card here. Now I know I said that I would like to avoid having the unique cards be mentioning common and rare, but I think this is different because this is not about you. This is more about them. This is a playing on the same concept but in a different way. So what could this be? I don't know why. That's the first thing that came to my mind. The idea of like merchants sort of conniving with each other. Um, this is not about the names. This is more about the abilities. Like I said, names are really hard, and I don't even have art for it. So I can move. I can get power. I can destroy. I'm limiting your ability to play common cards here. That'll sort of be sort of a magnet for a vial of poison. Let's come up with something crazy. What do we want to do here? Oh, I have an idea. So there's a card in Dominion that I'm always trying to get into Smash Up. It's Scrying Pool. The idea is that you're like continually hunting and the floor is extremely low, but if you set it up or if you get lucky, there's this crazy upside. It's been a while, but the idea of Scrying Pool is like, draw a card. If it's an reveal and draw a card. Keep doing this until you reveal a non-action. So the point is that I would stack my deck with actions and I draw a ton of cards, and then I get to play an extra action. I think it does. It's been a while since I played Scrying Pool, but I've always wanted to do an ability like that in Smash Up, and I feel like this could be an opportunity. So if we make the standard action, and we were to say something like, reveal cards from your deck until you reveal a common card. Draw all revealed cards. So let's talk about the math on this. So reveal cards from your deck until you reveal a common card. I've got, how much did we say? 13 plus 11, 24. I've pulled out 4 of them with my peddlers. So that would put it at a 50-50 odds. Probably need to play an action, much like Scrying Pool. So this is bargain hunting. So reveal cards from your deck until you reveal a common card. Draw all reveal action. Draw all revealed cards. Play an action. So, Or do I want to play one revealed card? I think that would be much more interesting. Let's start with the order. So I want to have the cards drawn first in order to work for the appraiser. Draw all revealed card, play one revealed cards. Now, the issue is if you were to pair this with like a world champs type, that is going to get out of hand quickly. That probably kills this ability from existing because it messes with the ratios. That's unfortunate. That's probably not going to work. I like the spirit of this. This is why it's so hard to get a scrying pool type card in. I'm going to leave this for now, but probably come back to it later. Supply and demand would trigger bargain hunting. So let's look at supply and demand as a cast-friendly card. If I'm playing it with, I feel like the supply and demand would need to get shuffled back in. But then that's kind of defeating the purpose of drawing cards. Something doesn't feel right. Because if you're playing this as your first action, then it's going to be slightly underwhelming. You would need Tressa. I think what I want to do is I want to go back to the idea of playing with a commonality. So let's say reveal and draw 2 cards. For each common card, X. For each rare card, Y. So the common cards are more likely to be triggered. So what do we want to do there? If I were to say power counters, that would have a floor of 2 cards and 2 power counters, which for a double feature, you see double features like Mulan has 2 power counters and 1 card. Temporary power wouldn't make sense for the context. Could be okay because you can't plan for it, so you don't know what you're getting. The question is, what would the rare card be? So for each common card, for each rare card, so I think rare cards should have the power counters. Like if you hit something good, place a +1 power counter on a minion. What would be a nice benefit? Look at the top card of any deck. Yeah, I could see that being good. A little bit of knowledge. Because when I say drawing 2 cards is bad, it is slightly below the baseline of what it needs to be. Now you are telegraphing the information, but you can look at any card. I think that's a better. I think that's much less. That way you don't have to hold on to it. I realize with the other ability, if with that type of ability, it creates sort of a competing agenda. You want to play your draw cards early, but you want to hold on to it until you get like a Tressa. So bargain hunting, I love you, but you probably can't exist. Let's look at the rest of the faction. So let's come up with a game plan. So we're going to make this say recursion. You know what? I just thought of a better option than looking at the cards. This is something that I do a lot. The idea that cards that you draw are free. So for each common card, increase your hand limit by 1 card until the end of the turn. Well, would I want that for the rare cards? I think I want that for the rare cards. That's more interesting anyway, because it's like anytime that, let's actually invert this. So let's keep the looking at the top card of any deck. For each rare card, increase your hand size by 1 until the end of the turn. That is more unique, that is much more interesting, and that's a space that I'd rather play around with because that could be useful for your appraisers. It'll give you more room in your hand. I've always said that thieves need hand size anyway, and that way we're not, if we're doing toolbox, which I said that I want to do, we're doing much more interesting things by giving you the ability to sort of look ahead, and we're not double dipping into power too much. So I play Supply and Demand, I play Merlinus, I've got the ability to, this is sort of a mid-game card, play a rare action. None of these are that stand out, they don't stand out that much. Reveal the top card of your deck. If you have a rare card, draw it or play it now. So what am I hitting with that? I'm not sure Merlinus is right, and it doesn't have, and I want to say that you don't have to get everything right on the first try. You just want to have a cohesive idea. So he's the upside, playing an extra rare card, which you could potentially know with Supply and Demand. That's kind of nice. And then Nico gives you a certainty of a rare play, but again, none of these are all that impactful, especially since Vial of Poison is not a 23 special. You're looking at playing one of these 4 cards, and then your partner actions. So I'd want to give him at least 5, so I think that if Nico's going to stay, we would need to give Bargain Hunting something that he can do and not be a special. So draw, deck management, recursion, searching. We really want a crazy ability. All right, let's think creatively. Let's end on something good here. What do we want to end on? So how are we doing on modifiers? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a decent amount of modifiers. Let's see. If I'm trying to allow if the appraisers can be played early, I would want to allow them to be out for a while. Like how thieves have Potion of Halitosis. I just thought of an idea, but it goes against what Nico wants. The idea was, okay, once again, make the number of cards in your hand matter based on the number of rare cards that you have. You can do something, but again, that would be a special. Like, if you have 8 rare cards in your hand, you can move up to 8 power worth of minions after a base course. That'd be super cool, but it goes against what we want. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull another card from the vault. This one is going to be hard to write in Smash Up language. I'll write it in English first. Any minion that is currently in play at the time this resolves does not add power to its base. So the idea is that it's a stall card, but it's a global. It basically says no minions that are being played are contributing power and have their abilities canceled. So it's basically meant to be like a clean slate. What's interesting about this card, I tried to use it before. It works really good in a faction with banked plays. You could, bank all the plays like Tressa's play and Nico's play, and then you could play this, and it'll cancel all the abilities, but you've already used them. It lets everyone create like a field of effect. So the effect has already happened, and now anyone that's played after that is free of it, but it can still slow someone down. It's situational, yes, but it is interesting. So let's see how we could word this. So cancel the ability of each minion in play. It does not add power to its base. Let's make it to any base until the start of your next turn. Place this card into the box. So cancel the ability of each minion in play. It does not add power to any base until the start of your next turn. Place this card into the box. This is to prevent spamming, because this is the type of ability that you really don't want to repeat with, like Time Travelers, because that will get out of hand quickly. I think that would be good, because especially with their delayed equity, I could see that being really useful. You play an Appraiser, you play a rare action on it, and like you play Boots of Hermes. Now the Appraiser doesn't add power to its base. He's really big, so you can't do anything to him, but he's mobile and you don't know where he's going. I think I like that. What do you want to call this? Is this too on the nose? I think that's actually a poultice. I couldn't remember what the word was. I was trying to avoid potion. Couldn't think of a synonym. So I think paralysis poultice. That could be interesting. And there we have it. Let's go ahead and remove all this stuff and zoom in. So we've got how many common cards do we care about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Higher than I thought, but still not really in your face. Rare cards, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Also the same. And then we've got a bunch of versatile abilities that are useful. I think this is pretty interesting for a first pass. I'll try and post a link in the description with some updated art and maybe some better names, but yeah, that's kind of my thought process when it comes to making a custom faction. Okay, now we have an alpha test for merchants. Hopefully, if I have time to actually play this, it'd be really fun to see this in action, but that's a thought process that goes into making a faction. Anything stand out to you? Anything that you found particularly interesting? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Let's shut it down.